you ever wondered what happens to a champion after they're defeated in a Pokemon game? For the most part, it seems they just go back about their normal business and sit upon the pinnacle of Pokemon trainers, there as an ultimate challenge should you choose to go through the Elite Four again. But in 2 games, we actually get some sort of answer for what happens to them. In Galar, Leon takes over for Chairman Rose, taking over the Pokemon Association, and in the Johto games, we find out that Blue has become a gym leader, and that's what I think is the more likely thing to occur. You see, in Galar, we talk about again how there is a minor league available for gym trainers and gym leaders. So does that mean that if you're defeated, you fall down the rankings and therefore would eventually become demoted to become a gym leader? We've seen gym leaders rise up to become members of the Elite Four, such as Koga, or even become champion like Iris. But what happens if they keep losing? What would happen if they became gym leaders again? And what would their teams be? Especially what would happen if they fell all the way through the rankings and had to start from the bottom. This video is going to talk about what happens to the 9 champions if they continue to lose and had to work their way back up through the gym leader rankings. Before we get into it, I just need to address a few concerns, comments, thoughts that I had whilst I was going through this. You see, most of the champions don't have a type specialty, but through some of their lore and perhaps some of their general background vibe and some of their teams that they presented, they might have a particular focus. So we're going to use that as a guideline. For the most part, I'm going to be building these team compositions based on the level cap set by the existing gym leaders. So for example, Brock has the highest level Pokemon of level 12, which is going to affect where Blue's first Pokemon is going to lie in. Second, I'm going to be limiting the number of Pokemon based on what they probably should have at the time. So for the first 2 gyms, they've only got 2 Pokemon. For the next 2, they've got 3. For the 5th, 6th, and 7th gym, they've got 4. And for the last gym, they've got 5 to give us a real challenge. With one notable exception, and it's appropriate that we start with that exception, which is Blue. Blue is the rival character in the Kanto games, and he's pretty much there to be a foil. He picks the starter that's strong against yours, so his team changes all the time. For his team, we're not going to really take his champion team, we're going to look more towards his gym leader team when he led the Viridian Gym. That team is made up of Pidgeot, Alakazam, Rhydon, Gyarados, Exeggutor, and Arcanine. It's very close to his champion team, except the starters will sort of switch in for Gyarados, Exeggutor, and Arcanine. As such, I can't really give Blue a particular specialty, but what we can do is do something like the Striaton Gym. The Striaton Gym is designed so that trainers will have to learn about the type matchups, so why not do that here? Why not give Blue 3 Pokemon that would start things off? I'm going to disregard what I said about team composition when it comes to Blue, because he's designed to be a character that's there to challenge you and to foil you at every turn. So what we're going to do with him is we're going to give him 3 Pokemon that line up with the starter choices, but his team composition will vary depending on the starter you choose. His lead Pokemon will be a Pokemon that is weak to the one that you chose, the middle one is going to be the same type, and then the third will be the one that is strong against it. For his team as the first gym leader, I've decided he's going to start off with an Execute, a Growlithe, and a Shellder. Yes, I am well aware that Shellder is not aligned with Gyarados, but I'm not giving him a Magikarp at level 12. Magikarp is going to be completely useless in that fight. And he has Shellder from his yellow team, because he had a Cloyster in that team. Plus, I kind of like the composition of him having 3 stone evolutions to work through. That just makes it a little bit more interesting to me. In the second gym, his team won't change because they're stone evolutions, and the level cap is still 19, so it makes no sense to introduce Magikarp in here either. Then when we get to the third gym, his Shellder will become a Gyarados. Once you moved on from Vermilion City into Celadon City, then his full team of Pokemon will have evolved, giving you a Gyarados, Exeggutor, and Arcanine. For his next 3 gym battles, we would include a Pidgeot as his ace. Finally, we return to Vermilion City and we give him his Rhydon, because it's the Earth badge, it makes sense for him to have a Rhydon there. Over to Johto now, and we're going to work with Lance. Lance has taken his defeat quite badly because he's kind of eschewed his dragon specialty type, as far as I'm concerned. There really aren't that many dragons to work with in Johto. Given that his champion team in the Johto games is Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Charizard, and 3 Dragonite, we're just going to work with that and scale it back a little bit. His first 2 gym teams are going to be Aerodactyl and Dratini, because, well, that's all he's got as real options, to be honest. Give him a little extra challenge in the 3rd and 4th gyms, though, we're going to add in a Charmeleon. Once we give him the ability to cross the sea, Lance will gain a second Dratini, and his first one will evolve into a Dragonair. Once you've returned for your 6th gym battle, that Dratini will have evolved into a Dragonair as well. When you've gone to Mahogany Town for that 7th gym battle, he will have substituted his Charmeleon for a Gyarados, because the Lake of Rage is right there. So you might as well have the red Gyarados, because why not? Finally, in Blackthorn City, you will have a Gyarados, Aerodactyl, Dragonair, Charizard, and Dragonite. And yes, I know that Dragonite is going to be the wrong level for its evolution, but there is precedence. there's precedence in Johto, for example, because Faulkner should not have that Pidgeotto, and frankly, by this point, he should probably have Dragonite. Let's give him a bit of a challenge. We head to Hoenn now, and we deal with the only champion that has a surname, which is Stephen Stone. He is a Steel specialist, so that's handy, we get to use Steel types, but there's actually not a huge amount of Steel types in Hoenn. In fact, in his champion team, he uses 2 Rock types, so we're going to give him the benefit of the doubt and say he gets Steel and Rock. But predominantly in the early gyms, we're going to focus on the Steel type. His first 2 Pokemon are going to be Aron and Beldum, which will see him through for the first 2 gym battles. Then by the time he's got to the 3rd gym, he will have gained a Magnemite and also evolved his Beldum into a Metang. For his 4th gym battle, he would have evolved his Aron into a Lairon, and then by the time you get to the 5th, he will have evolved his Magnemite into a Magneton and gained Skarmory. For the 6th gym battle, he will have probably kept his Lairon, Skarmory, Magneton and Metang, but by the time the 7th gym comes around, that Lairon will have evolved into Aggron, and depending on whether you're playing an Oras, he may have evolved his Magneton into a Magnezone, but if not, we can keep it as a Magneton. Finally, he will end up with Aggron, Skarmory, Metagross, and switch out that Magneton for Cradily and Armaldo, completing his almost champion team. Now over to Sinnoh and the most dangerous champion out there, Cynthia. Now, Cynthia doesn't really have a type specialty. Her ace is Garchomp, but there's only 3 Pokemon that have any overlap in the Venn diagram of her teams. Milotic, Garchomp, and Gastrodon. Because her background is as an archaeologist, I think she's probably going to be more preferable towards the ground typing, so we're going to build her gym team around the ground types. For her opening 2 gym battles, she would have a Shellos and a Gible. For her 3rd gym team, she would have added to the team a Gligar and evolved her Gible into a Gabite. For a 4th team, she would have evolved her Shellos into a Gastrodon, completing that team. Her team won't really change between the 5th and the 7th gyms, but she will evolve her Gligar into Gliscor and catch herself a Hippowdon just to help her get through some of those sandy situations. Finally, she would add one of her great archaeological discoveries, Spiritomb. I know Spiritomb's not a ground type, but it's okay for gym leaders to have one that's not quite right, and none of the others in Sinnoh really fit. And of course, we have to evolve Gabite into Garchomp. Now we head to Unova, where we're going to have 2 champions back to back, Alder and Iris. We're going to start with Alder, who has some lore around him that his first partner Pokemon was lost at some point, and it has been since revealed that that was a Larvesta. So we're going to give him the bug specialty, which is kind of cool. There's a lot of fun bugs in Unova. For his opening 2 gyms, he's going to have Joltik and Larvesta his ace. The 3rd and 4th gym, he's going to add a Dwebble to that team to deal with those pesky fire and flying types. For his 5th gym, he's going to have Joltik, Shelmet or Carablast, and then Escavalier or Excelgor, depending on which version you're using. And then he'll have his Volcarona. Volcarona's kind of okay here because you can catch a level 31 in Relic Castle. I know that's black 2 and white 2, but we're just going to be okay with it because it would suck to go against a Larvesta at the 5th gym. For his 6th gym, he'll have Joltik, Escavalier, Excelgor, and Volcarona. If he's the 7th gym leader, his Joltik will finally evolve into Galvantula, rounding out his team, and as the 8th gym leader, he'll add in that Dwebble again, evolve this time into a Crustle. Fast forward a few years to Black 2, White 2, and we're going to have Iris as a Dragon champion once again. This isn't any better than Lance's, so strap in, you're going to be hearing these names quite a lot. For her first 2 team members, she's going to have a Dino and an Axew. Then she's going to continue having Dino and Axew. Then she'll have Dino, Druddigon, and Axew. Then Dino, Druddigon, and Axew. It gets a little silly. She's going to keep these things, and they just won't evolve at the right levels. For the 5th gym, she'll add Vibrava to her Dino, Druddigon, and Axew. However, by the time she is the 6th gym leader, she will finally have a Zweilous, along with the Druddigon, Vibrava, and a Fracture. And yes, we're cheating the levels to make sure she gets herself a Zweilous. We're just going to be okay with that. We don't want her dealing with a Dino all the way through, okay? It's fine. For her 7th gym team, she'll have a Zweilous, Druddigon, Flygon, and Fracture. And finally, is the 8th gym, more level muddling. We're going to have Hydreigon, Druddigon, Flygon, Altaria, and Haxorus. But Iris was hard, okay? She has a lot of different dragon types, and boy, they have some awkward levels. It's better than Johto. At least we've got all dragon types. Now to the Kalos region, and Diantha. Diantha is my least favourite champion. She is so non-influential for the entire story. She just kind of turns up twice and then wanders off. It's not great. I decided to make Diantha a fairy type specialist because although there is some overlap in her teams of Goodra, Tyrantrum, and Aurorus, she doesn't really have any great specialties, and given that this is the first introduction of the fairy typing, it kind of makes sense to have a fairy type gym leader. And yes, we are ignoring the fact that there is already a fairy type gym leader in Kalos. We're just going to go with it, okay? Her first gym team will be a Flabebe and a Routes. But by the time you get to the 2nd, her team will have to break the usual conventions. because whilst her team will have evolved into Floette and Curlier, those Pokemon are terrible, so we're just going to give her a Sylveon as well and just make that okay. This team will stick with her through the 3rd gym, and then when she gets to the 4th, her Floette will evolve into Florges. In her role as the 5th and 6th gym leader, she will add a Whimsicott to that team, just to make it a little bit more challenging. And of course, her Curlier will have evolved into a Gardevoir. In the 7th gym, we'll unlock the Mega Stone to give her a Mega Gardevoir, and then finally she will add a Togekiss to the team, just rounding it out for that last gym challenge. I'm going to skip below those now because, well, A, they don't have gym leaders, and B, they don't have a champion until, well, you. And you have very varied teams, and I do not want to have to go through every permeation just to create a reasonable gym team for each level. Now we head to Gala, and we're assuming this time that Leon did not take on the role of chairman, and he's now just pottering around as a gym leader. His team's a bit more of a challenge. You see, depending on which Pokemon you've picked, his team is going to vary drastically. He always has a Aegislash, Dragapult and Haxorus, with Gigantamax Charizard of course, but his team varies depending on which starter you chose. If you pick Grookey, he will have a Cyspitoad and a Cinderace. If you pick Scorbunny, he'll have a Mr. Rime and an Inteleon, and if you have Sobble, he has Rhyperior and Rillaboom. There's a strong case to suggest that he might be a Dragon-type specialist, given that he has Charizard, Dragapult and Haxorus, but I want to do another Dragon-type specialist, so I'm going to give him Fire. Gala has one of the highest level caps for the starting gym, so his opening team is going to be Scorbunny and Charmeleon. By the time he becomes the 2nd gym leader, he'll have evolved his Scorbunny into a Raboot. To round out the team as the 3rd gym leader, he'll add a Drought Vulpix just to make things a little bit more challenging for the player. Then by the time he's the 4th gym leader, he'll have evolved that Vulpix into a Ninetales, evolved his Raboot into Cinderace, and gained the G-Max Charizard that he is well known for. Then for the 5th, 6th and 7th gyms, he's going to add a Colossal just to round out that team. By the time he becomes the 8th gym leader, he'll add a Center Scorch just to make that team really strong. Finally we move to Paldea and we go to Geeta. And Geeta is an interesting one. She has the Rock Terror type on her Glimmora, so that suggests she's going to be a rock specialist. But with the way that gym leaders work in Paldea, their last Pokemon isn't going to match the typing. I also like to think that she's learned from her mistakes in her strategies, so she's going to mix it up a bit from her champion team. To start things up, she's going to have a Glimmet to spread those toxic spikes early on, and she's going to have a Pawniard with the Rock Terror type. This will be the same for her 2nd gym leader team, and then she'll add a Napoli when she comes to the 3rd gym. As 4th gym leader, she will evolve that Napoli into Knacklestack. For her 5th gym team, she's going to evolve that Glimmet into Glimmora and add in a Cloth. Then for her 6th gym team, that Knacklestack will evolve into Garganical, and Pawniard will finally evolve into Bishop. Which, yes, we're wobbly with the levels again, but come on. We gotta have a little bit of grace here. The Pawniard is just not going to be that much of a challenge for a player at that point. She'll keep that team as the 7th gym leader, and then finally catch herself an Iron Thorns and evolve that Bishop into King Gambit as the last gym leader. Thanks so much for watching, I hope you enjoyed this, and whether or not you agree with the teams and whether their specialties are right, let me know in the comments below. Otherwise, whilst you're here, why don't you subscribe? And there's another video that YouTube will think that you'll like, so check it out.